and doing so regains 10 of his HP. The other reason is that we're right?
Chestnut roasting, Jack Frost nipping at your nose. So I'm offering this simple phrase.
Hello there, heroes. I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. You know, Hyperforce and I had something in common this week: getting back in the saddle. I ended up 3 weeks behind, I hate to admit, on releasing Hyperforce session reviews, and was actually partially helped by a postponement that I would have rather not had the benefit of, since it was due to wildfires in the Los Angeles area that thankfully did not do any damage to the Hyper RPG studio. And they, of course, had to deal with all the repercussions of those wildfires and getting their productions back in order. Power Rangers Hyperforce was basically the first Hyper RPG show to be postponed by the wildfires, so it was the one that had the longest wait to get back to action, as it were. And by the way, what a place for it to leave off on. Just as a little quick recap for you all, Vesper is an android, Venjix is now in control of her, she darn near killed Eddie, and the other Rangers have been captured by Kilobyte. So how are they gonna get out of this one? Well, let's find out by taking a look at the long-awaited 7th session of Power Rangers Hyperforce, I, Vesper. The action actually starts with the villains, interestingly enough, as Kilobyte reports to Venjix via a screen. Venjix says he's intrigued by the appearance of these brand new Power Rangers, and is sending General Shifter to pick them up. Minor spoiler here, but for whatever reason, Shifter never actually arrives and isn't part of the story whatsoever. Marv, Chloe, and Jack find themselves in a large cell with a solid ceiling and floor, and the other civilians are gone. Marv starts asking what's going on when suddenly a large herd of grinders appear around the cell and start jabbing them with tasers. The three of them are eventually knocked unconscious, and the grinders take their morphers. They start to come around as the cell lowers through a multi-level factory with mechanics, machines, all kinds of various metal, grinders working on various bits of weapons and pieces of armor, and etc. Marv is still confused and distrusting, since the last thing he remembers hearing was Vesper saying that Jack wasn't acting like himself. For his part, Jack is upset that Marv drew a weapon on him. Chloe is just confused, and as a matter of fact, so am I, because I know it's been 2 weeks, but I don't really remember Marv drawing a weapon on Jack. Marv and Jack start going back and forth about their troubled relationship and past as Time Force police, until Marv suddenly realizes if Jack remembers their past, clearly he is who he says he is, so it must have been Vesper that betrayed them after all. The cell lowers down between some unconnected walls, and they can see that over a little further away is another cell with some of the refugees from before. To their right is a very solid-looking, very energetic and enthusiastic man, while to their left is a far less energetic and much more nearly dead man. Yes, the Rangers have found Eddie. They push against the bars of the cell trying to get to Eddie, but the bars won't give. They speak to the man to the right, who says that his name is Jem. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it was guest star time, as Mike Ginn became the 3rd Power Rangers actor to reprise their role on Hyperforce. Jem is the hyperactive, crazy man that we came to know and love on RPM, introducing himself and immediately saying, "My sister and I took out 20 grinders before they captured us. What about you?" He's actually very impressed when the Rangers say they must have taken down a good 60 or so. Jem tells the Rangers that Eddie just got there, and he thinks he's been there a few months, maybe. Hard to tell with time these days. Then it's just reunions all over the place as Vesper walks in, still morphed and clearly patrolling the factory floor. The Rangers call to her and try to reason with her. She walks over to the cage, demorphs in order to face them head on, pulls her blade blaster, and shoots Marv point blank. Marv is just singed, but then she pulls her axe and points it directly at Jem. The other Rangers start jumping and hollering to draw her attention to them, protecting what they believe to be just an innocent civilian, and she just gets frustrated with the whole thing, saying they'll just end up destroying themselves anyway. She fires a warning shot over Jack's head and leaves. Jem says something along the lines of, "Gee, the robot lady sure was mad," and the others ask him why he called her that. But Jem's not going to be the one to explain that to the Rangers. Eddie is. He slowly starts to come around and explains what happened to his fellow Rangers. For his part, Jem says that he's just been around robots so long that he's just able to tell. Marv asks Eddie if he still has his morpher, but unfortunately he doesn't. When Jem hears them talking about morphers, he starts rambling on about how his BFF, Dr. K, yes, created the Venjix virus, but also created the Ranger Series Operator program in order to fight Venjix. Eddie just decides to make this really simple for the others. Vesper is a robot, and now Venjix is in control of that robot. As the Rangers try to figure a way out of the situation, Jem explains that every day the grinders come to take them to the factory floor to help make more grinders. Marv tries to entice Jem's help by asking if he'd like to be an honorary Ranger Series operator. Jem says, "Been there, done that." Yes, of course, Jem is a Power Ranger, or a Ranger Series operator, I guess you would say in this case. But he says, unfortunately, his morpher is with their morphers in the research lab, which kind of makes Jack wonder if maybe he's just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So then Malika did something that was unfortunately kind of common in this session, giving the plot a gentle nudge by reminding Jem that he has a plan to get out of there, doesn't he? Jem says, "Oh, you guys wanted to escape. I was just making more grinders so there would be more for me to destroy later. But I mean, if you actually want to get out of here, then I have this security disabling device that I made, and I've also got these bombs." Chloe says that they could use the bombs to blow something up and then it would be boom time. Jem decides that he really likes that phrase and kind of tucks it away for later. Vesper comes to get them for their shift, even as Chloe says they're hungry. They haven't had anything to eat. At least a carrot would be nice. To be honest with you, a whole bunch of kind of random action happens right here, but none of it really means anything, which is unfortunately kind of another common theme of this session, as in the end they all just get herded to the factory floor anyway. They're taken to a room where it seems like various bits of scrap metal are being sorted to be used for grinders later. Marv snatches a pair of knitting needles that he thinks might be useful as weapons later on. In this room, there are 3 generators off to the left side of the room, and Jem knows that the research room is off to the right side. The Rangers decide to plant the bombs on the 3 generators. However, there are 6 grinders patrolling each side of the room, so they're going to need a distraction. Jack decides to start doing his job really, really badly, and Marv plays off of their previous conflict by getting on his case for it. Marv gets so mad about it that he flips a table, and the grinders start coming over and getting upset. Unfortunately, Jem then gets a little too excited about this, actually setting down the bombs and flipping over 2 tables, taking out 2 of the grinders in the process. Vesper is definitely getting tired of all of this, grabbing Eddie and holding him at sword point. Marv starts protesting that he's just trying to keep Jack in line and keep them on their quota and keep everything smooth, and it's not like a plan or anything, everything's fine. But Vesper is not buying this. Chloe, who's been kind of lost in the shuffle and is off to the side of the room, steps out and picks up the 3 bombs, but then kind of quietly steps back into the shadows, just a little bit overwhelmed with everything that's been going on. Marv and Jack, as well as Jem, really badly from across the room start trying to convince Vesper that they have seen the error of their ways. Venjix is clearly the one that they should be following. She doesn't believe Marv or Jem, obviously, but does feel like Jack may be telling the truth and puts him in charge of the group of his friends, saying that they had better meet their quota or Eddie over there might get pretty familiar with her Cerberus acts. But then she walks over to Chloe and hands her a carrot before walking away. Chloe starts to plant the bombs, but then kind of steps right back into the shadows, probably still a bit overwhelmed by everything. Realizing that she's going to need another distraction, Marv goes to a bit of an extreme, shall we say, running up to Vesper and super puking on her. I am absolutely serious. He rolled successfully and added a super to puke, to throw up on Vesper. The grinders freak out and all flock over to Vesper, trying to brush things off and help her, but not even being sure how to. So the Rangers take advantage of this moment of distraction by standing around talking about the bombs for another few minutes before Mike finally just asks Malika, is anything stopping us from actually planting the bombs? Malika says, no, this would be a really good time. Jem and Chloe plant their bombs and then set them off by each screaming, it's boom time, and then set off the third by Chloe filling in for Gemma and finishing Jem's it's boom with her own time. As the bombs go off and push them up into the air, Chloe does a cartwheel, Jem does a ballerina split, and the two of them high-five in midair. It's fan art time! The 10 grinders are now absolutely freaked out. Their boss is covered in puke, 3 generators just exploded, it's raining shrapnel and metal, it's just absolute madness. Research grinders, basically grinders in lab coats without any sort of armor, come running out of the research lab and just take off and get the heck out of Dodge. Jack kind of messes up here. He grabs one of the benches and goes running at one of the groups of grinders. Unfortunately, he picks the group of 4 instead of the group of 6. He does manage to take one of them out. Unfortunately, this took him in the wrong direction, running away from the research lab. Eddie tells Marv to go help with the others and that he will take care of Vesper one-on-one. However, Malika very gently reminds him that he is currently at 4 HP, so his best move right now might be to go find a quiet corner to hide in. But this is when something else very interesting happened, and not just in the story, but in the game itself. You know how Dr. K created the Venjix virus? I guess RPM kind of serves as an inspiration to some of the hackers out there, because a couple of folks, and HyperRPG says they know the names, absolutely destroyed the game's energy system in Jem's favor, awarding Jem a whole ton of energy. At this particular point in the game, Jem had 12,345,170 energy. Remember that the Rangers normally max out somewhere between 6 and 10. Vesper morphs.
Hyperforce! Black! Ready! Power up!
And actually, none of the morphs this week had any sort of background music. I actually found that kind of atmospheric, and I thought it was a really nice touch. Not to mention being good for people who want clean versions of the morphs, then you can put whatever music you want on it. Malika gives Jem another move the plot forward nudge, saying, doesn't he know where the morphers are? So apparently Jem and Chloe have been kind of hanging suspended in midair this entire time, and Jem starts using up that, shall we say, excess energy to bounce off everything in the room with Chloe, fly through the air ducts and not get stuck, and then end up landing on a sofa near the research lab that just happens to have a table in front of it with a whole bunch of burritos. Of course. Malika says that was a very impressive acrobatic display. By the way, Chloe, your friend Eddie is dying. So the two of them head into the lab with Jack, who walked across the room to join them. Chloe is saddened by a holographic burrito that she can't actually grab and take, but Jack sees their morphers on the table, as well as 2 other ones, gold and silver ones that look kind of like flight sticks. To be fair, I don't think the Sky Morphers have individual colors, but he could have been referring to the boxes that were containing them, or maybe their engine cells were sitting right next to them and those would be silver and gold. Jack grabs up all of the morphers and runs past Chloe and Jem, and even something that was pointed out to very clearly be a medical locker, trying to get directly to Eddie. Vesper also decides that Marv should very quickly reunite with Eddie, throwing him at Eddie after jabbing him some more. Chloe leaves the lab to catch up with Jack, but Jem sees an interesting pile of cables on the table and starts working to rig something up. Jack runs over to Eddie and gives him his morpher. Now, why was this so critical above passing by a locker with medical supplies in it? Well, one reason is pretty plainly obvious. Eddie morphs.
Hyperforce! Blue! Ready! Power up!
And doing so restores 10 of his HP. The other reason was a little less obvious. A new card was introduced this week. During the 2 weeks that the show hasn't been on, Malika realized that a ton of people were sending energy specifically to Eddie, trying to save him, but that the game did not contain a mechanic for a ranger to use energy to heal for major injuries, because morphing only heals them a little bit. So she created one. She made a new card, the Healing Charge card. A ranger can use the Healing Charge card. The entire team has access to it, and it can be used twice in a single day, for a cost of 6 energy to roll 66 and heal by that amount, so between 6 and 36 points. Eddie does this and recovers 24 of his health, bringing him up to a total of 38, which is about 50%, basically half health. He's out of the woods. Meanwhile, Chloe is actually really annoyed that Jack didn't hand her her morpher before running off, so she kicks it out of his arms and grabs it. Vesper says if the Power Rangers want to be together that badly, then they can just die together. Chloe says if that's true, then Vesper is going to die as well, because she's also a ranger. Vesper stifles a laugh at this, but then throws her disc at Chloe and hits for 7 damage. In an interesting kind of twist, Malika actually grabbed control of the Popcorn Initiative and tossed things directly to Jem, who comes running out of the research lab and says he's made a device that can help them with Vesper. Marv gets so irritated that he didn't mention that he could do that in the first place that he just decides to morph. Jem asks Jack if he can hand him that gold morpher that you've got right there, and he morphs as well.
RPS! Get gear!
Chloe doesn't want to get left out, so she also morphs.
Hyperforce! Ready? Power up!
Jem tells the Rangers that he's made a bomb that can blow Vesper's head off. They refuse. Vesper is still their friend. They want to help her, not kill her. Eddie pushes Marv aside once again and says that he will handle things with Vesper himself. He takes off his helmet and pulls out his Ranger Bud's wrench, making an impassioned plea to her about all of her cute little quirks and how important and special she is, and how this evil personality isn't her. And this actually starts working. Vesper inside begins fighting her way out, and the conflict between herself and the virus causes her physical pain in her head. Marv asks Jem to rework the bomb so it can actually help Vesper, and he does. It's a series of cables kind of looking like an octopus, and each of them has a syringe end. Those syringes stab into the back of each of their necks and cause a very sharp and severe pain that makes them all black out. When they come to, they're in a dark sort of dreamscape, Jem explaining that this is now inside of Vesper's programming. They see channels on the ground carrying pulses of white light, her actual programming, and also see dark, tall skyscrapers made of segmented sections, almost made up of blocks like Legos. Eddie sees a single block laying near one of the skyscrapers and picks it up. It's almost like a cold, high-tech kind of a book, and when he picks it up, it shines and then opens. revealing a holographic first-person memory which Vesper starts narrating. One summer when Vesper was a young child, she was working on a mechanical dog when a group of bullies approached her. They said that she was too weird to ever have friends and that her stupid mechanical dog would never actually work. They smashed it, but then a boy with golden hair, a very popular boy named Robert, showed up and ran them off, and he spent the rest of that summer helping her to fix it. The next school year, Vesper had her own mechanical dog, and it actually made her quite popular. While tragically Robert passed away just a few years later, he taught her that she could make friends. Jem says this feels just like reading someone's diary, and Jack says that's actually true. This is like reading Vesper's diary. These are her private thoughts, and they should stay out of them and steer clear. They decide to look for Vesper's CPU and see a giant red light shining in the horizon. Might I remind you that this is the RPM universe. Giant red shining lights are almost never a good thing. They notice that the white pulses of lights in the channels on the ground head towards the giant red light, and then red pulses of light come back. Jack finally realizes that he should join the rest of the class and morph.
Hyperforce! Yellow! Ready! Power up!
And they notice that the giant red light is rising in the sky like a sun. Jem says that if the red light manages to rise all the way, Venjix will be in complete control of Vesper. They run in that direction and finally find Vesper's true self sitting on the ground despondently and viewing the memory of asking Eddie out. She is overjoyed to see the rest of the Rangers, apologizing all over herself and saying that she wasn't able to take control for more than brief moments. Moments like giving Chloe the carrot, or those little laughs. She asks the Rangers to help her fight Venjix, but Jem says the only thing the Rangers can do is make her stronger. She must be the one that defeats Venjix. She says that she doesn't even know who she is, what's going on. She's been a danger to the team. Maybe they should just go and leave her. But they rally around her. Vesper is a Power Ranger, and she is their friend. Eddie pulls out what I guess in this case is a representation of the Ranger Bud's wrench, especially since Vesper is also able to pull one out. They touch them together and they start either growing or glowing. Glowing would make more sense, but it sounded like they said growing. As the Venjix sun nears the top of the sky, and his booming voice declares that Vesper is his now. Marv tells Vesper to fight this, and Jem reminds her that in here, Vesper can do literally whatever she wants. Her imagination is a touch limited, though I have to admit that abject terror will do that to a person, as the only thing she can think of is forming a vortex blaster that somehow combines Jem's weapon into it. Knowing that her fellow Rangers will help her cope with whatever she is once she's free from this, she summons the weapon and they fire it. Colored blasts, tinged with gold, blasting into the Venjix light, which retracts. The floor shatters beneath them, and they all wake up in the lab. Now back to her true self, Vesper starts apologizing to everyone all over again, but of course they're just happy to have their teammate back. Then, a communications device inside an apron nearby starts going off with a strange message.
Alert! 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 The radiation levels in this area could definitely turn you into a lizard.
Jack realizes that this is a message and asks who's calling, and it's M. M has brought in the cavalry. She found another group of refugees and formed them into a rescue party. Now all she needs is a way into the building and a distraction. Jem and M hear each other talking and then realize that they were both at Alphabet Soup, which they talk about for a moment. Marv throws a bomb, blowing a nice round hole in the building and allowing M's group to enter. This also draws the attention of Grinders, but he slashes and takes out 4 of them at one time. M's group enters and starts looking for the civilians. Jem knows that the building has another wing, since that's where his sister might be, so he leads some of them in that direction. Unfortunately, they only find the Winchester family down there. No real indication of why the Winchesters were being held separately from everyone else. And of course, they are being snotty and difficult even as they're being rescued. Eddie finally comes down to help out with things and manages to get them out of their cage, and while his parents run off right away without a moment's hesitation, Chaz does stay just for a second to say a very begrudging thank you. So, a nice happy ending, right? Vesper's been brought back to the side of good, the civilians, even the Winchesters have all been rescued, everything's coming up good for the heroes, right? Ha ha ha! Oh, my friends, we're just getting started. A dark figure steps out of the shadows towards Jem and Eddie. Geez, even Hyperforce is matching up blue and gold lately. I'm an attack bot, Generation 13. Some even say I'm a real buzzkill. His hands and legs are covered in saws. He's got saws all over the rest of his body. And especially there's a channel from the top of his head running down to his chest where a saw moves back and forth. Jem says that looks like a fun thing to destroy and does a Super Ranger kick, double bolt sixing his roll and hitting for significant damage. Buzzkill then moves the center saw to the top of his head and headbutts Jem, hitting for 7 damage. Eddie takes 3 tiny bombs from Jem and attaches them to the end of his Oceanus trident, sliding under the monster intending to stick the bombs onto him. He kind of misses the slide a little bit, but does manage to stick 1 bomb on, which goes off for 8 damage. The other Rangers finish helping out with the refugees. Marv calls down to Eddie and asks how things are down there. Eddie says, oh, you know, dealing with a giant saw robot monster might be nice if we had a little bit of help down here. Jack calls over to Em and asks if she has things under control. Honestly, at this point, 5 people started talking at the same time, and it was really hard to tell what was going on, but in the end, Em says that yes, she's got things under control. So the 3 of them head down there, and Marv uses his Iapetus Spear Launcher, which is a weapon that he apparently has now. Seriously, his core weapon is a flamethrower, not a spear thrower. Whatever it is, it fires a flaming spear at the monster, which blocks it, but it catches in one of the rotating saws and kind of rotates up and smacks it in the face. Vesper tells this robot that she's an android. They're not anything alike because she has friends. And then she misses her attack. Chloe grabs Jem's 2 last tiny bombs and sticks them to the end of her arrows, firing them at the monster. The arrows hit, but the bombs don't go off. Then the monster starts glowing green, almost as if some kind of download has started. Buzzkill starts growing. Slowly. Very slowly. So slowly that Jack at first wonders if they should call their Zords, since this still might be considered escalating a battle. However, Buzzkill does just keep growing. Vesper confirms to the other Rangers with her experience with Venjix that their Morphers and Zords are not vulnerable. Venjix cannot access them. So they try calling their Zords for the first time. Since you might remember the first time they actually fought using them, they just kind of literally dropped out of the sky. Eddie is the only one who summons his Zord properly. Serpent Hyperforce Zord online. The others follow suit, and then Jem also calls his his Falcon Zord as well. Buzzkill finally reaches standard giant monster size and starts sawing at the civilians before turning to notice a giant shiny chicken flying at him. He uppercuts the Zord, knocking it up and then slamming it back down for 25 damage. Vesper tries her tail mace attack, but the monster just grabs the tail and slams Vesper's Zord into the sand. Chloe tries her Phoenix Feather spiraling attack, noticing as she's diving at the monster that it is actually still growing, but it just grabs her Zord and slams her into the sand as well. Jem taps into their communicators and tells them that he can tell that they're pretty new to the whole Zord thing, so have they ever thought to try and combine their Zords? I mean, Dr. K made all of her Zords so that they could combine. Marv says it's worth a shot and tells the team to focus on each other and combining all of their energy together. They start to feel a very strong connection to each other, and when Marv says, we need Hyperforce Megazord power, the Hyperzords come together and form the Kronos Hyperforce Megazord. You may have noticed the Chronos part of the name there, the Chronos Hyperforce Megazord. That's because this Megazord is going to have a number of different configurations, basically rotating each of the Rangers and their Zords into the center of the Megazord combination. Now, why is that important? Because of the battle system. When the Rangers battle as a Megazord, each of the Rangers rolls 1d6, but the Ranger in the center of the combination, in this case Marv, rolls 2d6s. All of that is added together for the Megazord's total attack. Jem tells the Rangers that Megazords are usually just kind of think and do, instinctive piloting, and that's the case here. Jem flies around the bot like a big gold bee for a while, distracting it, before his Zord and the new Megazord release a barrage of missiles into it. The bot is not destroyed, but this does jam all of its saws so it can't move. Jack pivots his Ramzord leg to kick the robot away, and then Kilobyte comes running out, desperate to protect his robot. Jack kicks anyway, and they both get kicked high up into the sky. Buzzkill is probably destroyed, while Kilobyte is flung a pretty good distance away. How far? Oh, I don't know, there's about 4,319.2 miles away.
4,319.2 miles of what?
That's going to be one long walk. The Rangers take stock of what they should do now. Vesper confirms, having been scanned in Venjix's mind and everything and all the information she had access to there, that this is an alternate timeline from theirs. They did not find Gemma, so they should probably let Gem go and keep looking. They also realized that they should probably apologize for almost stepping on the civilians that were down below them, so Vesper uses the intercom to call down and says, "They are Power Rangers from the future. She's a robot, but it's okay now. No need to worry about that. They've got their own Gold Ranger named Gem, and he's crazy, so best of luck there. And we're glad we were able to help you, but we've got to get going." Vesper, it is good to have you back. Marv realizes that if the Zords detached from the time ship and came to them, the time ship must be okay now. So, Alpha? They call to the time ship and call Alpha, but there's no response. The Rangers pilot their Megazord to the time ship, which teleports them down in front of it before disconnecting into Zord forms and reconnecting with the time ship. They run inside, but Alpha is still down. They start to think about what to do about this before Vesper realizes she now has some kind of instinctive connection to this ship. They also notice that that big red button from before is now a slot that Vesper can slide her hand into. It fits like a glove, and when she connects to it, white lights start pulsing through the time ship, restoring full power. Not knowing where, or to be more precise, when they should go next, Vesper suggests just getting the ship back into the Hyperforce, which she manages to accomplish. Marv asks the other Rangers if he can have a moment alone with Vesper, and Eddie gives him one of these. But it's not like that. Marv realizes that he's in a unique position to provide some comfort to Vesper after her recent revelation by making a revelation of his own privately to her. Marv is not human. Marv is not from Earth. The reason he tells her this is to point out that even though his mother said that he is not from the planet Earth and not a human, he, and so by extension she, can be whatever they choose to be. We pan out on a team at peace for the moment, although we still don't have any resolution on Alpha. This session is actually a tough one for me to judge because while it was certainly a lot of fun, it feels like it just fell a little bit short in some of the technical aspects. It's kind of becoming a rule of this series that any episode that features a guest star is just a little bit weaker, which is something that does actually make sense, seeing as many of these actors are brand new to role-playing. Mike specifically said that he is. So that there's just going to be a bit of a learning curve, and it's going to take some time to adjust, and things won't be as technically strong. But I felt like that was just kind of amplified this week, and I think it was mainly due to adding a purposefully and hilariously unstable element like Gem into this story. It was just really odd to see Malika actually have to do things to push the plot forward, such as reminding Gem that he had a plan to escape this cage the whole time, and oh yeah, by the way, Hyperforce Rangers, Eddie is dying. Now, don't get me wrong, Mike himself was actually fantastic, especially for a first-time ARP here. Gem was a very refreshing kind of character to add to this story. Somebody in the Twitch chat said that Gem is kind of like the Deadpool of the RPM world, and I kind of see it. It kind of fits. It was just fun to see some of these characters we've already established reacting to an element like Gem, with characters like Marv getting really frustrated and angry at Gem's lack of focus and his desire to blow things up. But at the same time, we also got serious story moments, such as going into Vesper's mind, which was poignant and dark and happy with the team coming together and supporting her. In the end, I just feel like the story wandered around a bit too much. There were too many moments where I felt like I was waiting for the actors, the players, to have their fun before we got back to, you know, actually telling the story. So while it was still really, really good and really entertaining, we just have another guest episode that doesn't rank quite as highly as the non-guest core episodes. Vesper gets a 4 out of 5. That's going to wrap up another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. Thank you, heroes, so much, as always, for watching. Make sure to like the video by clicking the like button right down below. In the comments, this one might be a little more divisive. Let me know what you thought of this session. Did you like how the story kind of wandered around and things were more random and less serious? Or were you, like me, kind of hoping that the serious plot that they'd established could keep on rolling? And as always, Thumpers, check in. Always glad to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos, and ring that bell and get your notifications set up so that you can be notified whenever brand new videos just like this Power Rangers Hyperforce session review get posted. And if you'd like to toss a little bit of financial support to my channel, you know, not asking for anything much and not saying it's necessary at all, you can head to digitaltipjar.com/OrangeRangerVid, toss me whatever little bits of spare change you would like, and I would be more than grateful for anything you can provide. Until next time, heroes, may the power protect you, and go Hyperforce. Marv, Chloe, and Jack find themselves in a large cell with a solid ceiling and floor, in order to help make more grinders. Marv tries to entice. Eddie over there might get pretty familiar with her Cerberus axe. That's frustrating. Gem and Chloe plant the bombs, then each set them off. It's boom time, and then setting off the third by come running out of the research lab and just take off, and everything about that take was madness. And headbutts Gem, hitting for other amounts of damage that are also 7. Unstable element like Gem into this kind of a story.